Hello, I'm Mrs. Kent, and I'm so excited to read with you today. When we left Arturo yesterday, he and the family were trying to make the community understand what Pipo was up to, and he had tried to tell Carmen how he felt, but she shut him down. He's been rejected. Let's start on chapter 16 now, on page 146, to see what happens. Chapter 16, When the Pot Boils. I couldn't believe I had messed up so epically. I'd admitted I liked a girl and it totally backfired. In my face. I paced around the restaurant while Brian munched on the last of his churro and Martine made jokes about the chocolate churros looking like poop. Martine was an imbecile. I went out to the patio and didn't see Carmen anywhere. She was probably avoiding me, like I had the plague or something. Of course she didn't like me. She kept saying we were family. I should have known better. I could imagine myself talking to Abuelo. But Abuelo, you said to have courage, to fight for your dreams, to fight for love like Jose Marti. Yes, Arturito, he would say. But you can't love your mom's goddaughter like that. That's just wrong, dude. Okay, maybe Abuela wouldn't have said dude, but still. I had a view of the lot from the patio, and I could see Wilfredo Pipo on stage. He spoke excitedly into the microphone as festival goers gathered. It was almost 8, and the sun had begun to drop over Main Street, casting shadows on the festival and turning the sky pink and orange. I thought of Pipo Place and the shadow it would cast if Wilfredo got his way. The building would absorb the entire neighborhood like a light-sucking vampire that turned everything into darkness. Good people, thank you all for coming to El Festival de las Estrellas. I hope you've had a wonderful day. I could have sworn Wilfredo winked at Commissioner Garcia, who was standing in the front row. Dulce from Two Scoops was there as well. I also spotted Enrique and Miss Patterson. Bicycle Bill sat on the outskirts of the growing crowd. He stroked his toy poodle, Henry, as he took in the scene. Was Wilfredo the Pied Piper or something? Look, everyone in this neighborhood is great. But don't you think it's time to take it to the next level? A few people clapped and nodded. It takes courage to embrace change, Wilfredo continued. And I think you all have that. You really do. I felt like he was stealing Abuelo's words. Courage wasn't something that Wilfredo had. My family had courage. Then I noticed Vanessa standing just outside of the festival, as Wilfredo had ordered, flyers limp in her hands. Ollie stood by her. She dropped her head onto Vanessa's shoulder and wrapped her arm around her. It was like an admission of defeat. It was we did our best kind of gesture. I could see flyers scattered in the streets just a few feet behind them, left behind by people who were now enjoying the festival. I looked back at my family. Uncle Carlos pushed the quadruple stroller back and forth, trying to put his 4 kids to sleep. Aunt Tootie watched quietly and reached for Uncle Carlos's hand. He took it in the way a younger brother takes the hand of his older sister when he wants things to be okay. My family gathered closer together, confined to our patio. I looked at Wilfredo on stage, alone. This ridiculous family-friendly community, he had said. Where was Wilfredo's family? All that success, and I never heard him talk about anyone who he cared about. Not one person. That was when it all clicked into place for me. All the towns where Wilfredo had developed land were tight-knit communities, just like Canal Grove. I looked at the crowd again. Annabelle and George held hands while they listened to Wilfredo. They had known each other ever since middle school, the same Palm Middle that I went to. They were getting married where Annabelle's parents had gotten married years before. Mrs. Patterson and Miss Minerva had walked at the same school for over 30 years. Dulce started 2 Scoops a year after La Cocina opened. Enrique was a prodigy at Palm High, left to attend a top art school in Paris, and returned to his hometown to open a gallery. Bicycle Bill. Well, nobody really knew where Bicycle Bill came from, but he had lived in the neighborhood for as long as anybody could remember. It's time to usher in a new era, Wilfredo yelled, where money will flow from the buildings that rise. Something suddenly came over me. I grabbed the sign Carmen had held earlier and marched toward the stage. I lifted the sign over my head and walked through the crowd, showing them all what they failed to see for ourselves. Family is community. Community is family. This community is about family. Canal Grove has always been about family. And now you want this guy who knows nothing about us to come in here and mess with our family? Hey, Wilfredo yelled, you're not supposed to have that on festival grounds. Wilfredo's security reached out for me, but before they could grab me, I swung the sign like a weapon and sprang back. Get him out of here, Wilfredo yelled. He ordered more security to come after me, but I swung my poster around like a sword to ward them off. Before I could do anything, I felt my sign ripped out of my hands from above. The security guard stopped, and when I looked up, I saw Wilfredo had plucked my sign from his pocket on the stage. His face had turned so red. He looked like a crab that had been boiled so long. Its claws were about to crack. He was disgusted by the sign. Community is family. I'll show you what family is. Wilfredo snapped the sign in half with his knee and tossed the broken bits into the crowd. A few people ducked and scattered out of the way. Family is a flawed system. Family will not save you or provide for you or keep you safe. The only thing that keeps you safe is money. Do you think these people care about your family, little boy? They don't. They care about themselves. Do you think Chuchi isn't beaming at the prospect of a whole new flock of business once my building goes up? Do you think the commissioner isn't jumping for joy, knowing by the time elections come around, he will have presided over the biggest economic growth this town has ever seen? You think that because people go to your restaurant that they owe you some kind of allegiance? You're wrong, I yelled, storming the stage. Just because you don't have a family or don't care about them doesn't mean they don't care about theirs. I pointed to everyone in the crowd. You be quiet about my family, little boy. Why don't you ever talk about your family? What are you hiding? I yelled at the top of my lungs. Wilfredo gritted his teeth and tried to smile at the crowd. Family is a competition where the strongest gets the inheritance. That is how success is taught, Wilfredo sneered, then drew in close. His breath smelled like room temperature cheese. I beat my family and my brothers and sisters and earned my father's love. You win by being strong, not sentimental and weak. Wilfredo stepped away from me and addressed the crowd. This boy and his family are beginning to look like sore losers, Wilfredo laughed and continued. They are sneaking around, trying to rally and protest something that is perfectly within my right to do. Apparently, your abuela and abuelo didn't learn that in this country, people are free to buy property. They knew that, I said, my voice loud and bold. But Jose Marti said, we are free. I tried to remember the quote Carmen said, but not to be indifferent. Indifferent from the, darn, what did they say? You can't even remember the quote. Pathetic. But not to profit from the people, from the work created and sustained through their spirit. Bicycle Bill chimed in as he walked to the foot of the stage. He slowly picked up the broken sign and took it back to his bike. Whatever the quote, this is my festival, and I have done nothing wrong by placing a bid on this property. And you have intruded and handed out propaganda while I explicitly told you not to. Now get this boy out of my sight. Everyone in the crowd looked like they had just seen an alien spaceship land. Their jaws were on the floor. Before I could figure out what that meant, I felt two hands grab me and escort me off the stage. Don't touch my nephew, Aunt Tootie yelled at Wilfredo's festival security guards. On my way to wherever they were taking me, I caught a glimpse of Carmen at the restaurant's patio. I guess she'd seen the whole thing. It felt like 1,000 pounds of refried beans had just dumped onto my head. Chapter 17. Words you would never want to hear. The festival holding cell was a mobile office with 3 rooms closed off from one another that ran the length of the trailer. From the way it creaked and smelled, it was probably brand new 50 years ago. It felt like being in a rectangular lunchbox floating on the ocean. On the window, a palmetto bug looked like it was trying to decide if it wanted to snoop around the dirty streets or stay put. I scooted away from it because palmetto bugs look like mutant roaches, and even though they didn't bite, they were still freakishly big. It would probably find the half-eaten churro that had fallen out of my pocket and feast on its sugary heartbreak. Outside the window, Wilfredo's team took down tents and booths, so I had a clear view of La Cochina, a reminder of my failed attempt to convince the neighborhood that the restaurants belonged. But now my family was probably at the apartment. Ya si acabo. It was all over. I could feel the trailer sway from side to side as if a stampede of rhinos marched down the narrow aisle. Angry voices got closer and closer, and suddenly the latch to my cell shook until it finally unhinged and the door swung open. Aunt Tootie marched inside like an alligator ready to snap. She turned around and took a defensive stance against the other people storming into my tiny cell. It was Wilfredo and a police officer. Do you think that you can come onto my stage and ruin my festival? Wilfredo said, pointing at me. But the trailer rocked so much, he had to hold himself up against the roof with both hands to prevent himself from falling. Am I going to be arrested? I asked the police officer standing behind him. Nobody's arresting anybody, Arturo, Aunt Tootie said, squeezing past Wilfredo. Signora, careful with my hair. Wilfredo checked his coif and slithered out of the cell like the snake he was. My nephew was exercising freedom of speech. That is not a crime, right, Rogelio? He's free to go, Officer Rogelio said, and Aunt Tootie patted him affectionately on the back. Thanks, she said, and we moved across the street. Any time, Officer Rogelio replied. Wilfredo stepped out of the trailer. You're lucky the police chief wasn't available to take my call, Nino Treviso. Aunt Tootie lunged at him, but Officer Rogelio held her back while Wilfredo adjusted her suit and sauntered away. I wanted to run after Wilfredo. I wanted to dump a pot of lard all over his head and his stupid festival and his peepo place. Can you believe this guy, Aunt Tootie, turning around, my blood still boiling? Aunt Tootie stared quietly on her phone. Her eyes welled with tears that began streaming down her face, mixing with her makeup to make black streaks. Aunt Tootie? I asked. But she didn't answer. She remained frozen for a moment, staring at her screen before whispering, It's Abuela, Arturo. She's been taken to the hospital. But she's okay, right? And Tootie typed on her phone. Something was wrong with my ears because it was like all other sounds were blocked except for her phone dinging very loudly. I don't know, mi amor. Come on, let's go home. We walked in silence. The streets were empty, except for a few trucks that had come to take the festival tents away. There were massive amounts of garbage all over the ground. I wondered who was going to pick up all that mess. I knew it wasn't going to be Wilfredo Pipo. The entire way home, my chest thumped like a volcano ready to erupt. Aunt Tootie walked me all the way inside when we finally got to the complex. It'll be okay, honey, don't worry. Tootie hadn't called me honey since I was a little kid. She pulled me in and hugged me tightly. I didn't mind it so much because she smelled like plums, and she felt squishy and soft when you hugged her. One of the stones from her necklace poked me in the eye, and I pulled away. Ay, pobrecito, poor thing. Ven, let me see. Tootie licked her thumb and wiped the corner of my eye. You have moco in your ojito. I pulled back. My mother would have never done that. Don't tell your mom, okay? She hates it when I clean you like that. Vieja presumida. Tootie was right. If my mom had ever seen her doing it, she probably would have tightened her lips, and without her saying a word, everyone would have known how displeased she was. Okay, mi amor. Your mom said that some picadillo in the kitchen. There's some picadillo in the kitchen. Tus padres won't be back until later tonight. Eat, okay? Estás muy flaquito. I wasn't really skinny. I just wasn't big-boned. Tootie must have taken after Abuelo. Abuelo was short and round. Abuela was tall and lean with very thin wrists and long arms that wrapped all around you when she hugged. Don't forget to eat, honey. Tootie gave me a kiss and left. In the kitchen, I saw the big plate of picadillo with rice and beans. There was enough food on the plate to feed me for 6 days. I wasn't really hungry, so I put it away. All right, students, things have definitely gone from bad to worse for Arturo. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll pick up with the next part of this chapter. Bye-bye.